Hello everyone, welcome to the video. So today I'm gonna talk about MMORPGs and why can't they be good. I'll try to stick to go through certain points. They're not gonna be long. I'll try to make them compact and get straight to the point. So bear with me. First point, monetization. Do not make it pay to win. Very simple. Don't add anything that would impact the gameplay. Add cosmetics. Focus on the roleplay part. That's all you have to do. Roleplay is the name of the game, after all. So focus on that. You can give lore pages that people can write about themselves, or costumes, or whatever it is. And you don't have to create costumes yourself. Let the players do it. Do events. Do events. Let the people create costumes for you. It's an MMORPG. Everybody's playing, everybody's enjoying it. And of course they want to see more content that is more catered towards them instead of like from perspective of a single individual or a single group. No, it should be expansive. Do events. It's very simple. Like a lot of companies already do events where you have to, where you create art for the game. So here's an event. Artwork for the game. Imagine a monster that fits in the world. Imagine the costume that fits in the world. Alright, imagine the costume. Let them draw it. Pick out the winners. And reward them. Not by just giving something, but adding that costume as part of the game. And if you really want to expand on this idea, you can always give a percentage of profit to the players. Like, oh, you made this great thing. Okay, that's lovely. We'll give you, let's say, 5% of earnings from this specific costume, or 2%, or even 1% would be enough. To some people, that would be enough for a living, and if they make enough, so you automatically have a lot of people pitching in to make the content for the game. You don't need to overwork your team, which could focus on other things that players cannot influence. So be smart about monetization. Focus on RPG. Use your communities. They are great. Most of the communities are really amazing. They have great artists. They have great writers. Don't be stupid. Accept their enthusiasm and accept their love for the game, and let them join you on it and reward them for it, and you will never have to worry about that again. Second thing I will be talking about right now is quests, missions. They're just, well, frankly speaking, bad. As we have it now, I think the closest to what I consider acceptable when it comes to missions and interaction with the world, stories, the missions and all that, mumbo jumbo is, well, Guild Wars 2. I don't see any other game that has anything that would be as well done as Guild Wars 2. There is some games with very nicely designed missions that are unique in quite a few ways, but they're still the same static missions. Everybody gets the same mission and goes to the same place and does the same thing. Guild Wars 2 is, well, like I said, it's the best right now when it comes to missions, but it doesn't mean it's good. What they did, they simply moved the NPC to another location somewhere in the world. So you find them as you walk around. So it's something, but it isn't what would make it good. What would make the game good is randomness. It's a simple thing. Make it random. You write the stories, you write the missions, and make them happen randomly. And for that to happen, I have to talk about the world at the same time, in addition to the missions. So the world has to be random as well, because the missions have to interact with the world. They shouldn't be separate. They should never be a separate thing. They should be integral part of the world the player is experiencing. If it's not, then well, the game is just doesn't click quite often. Which is why, like I said, it has to be random. All these things depends on the randomness. When people play the game, the first thought they want is a new experience, a new adventure. Sounds great. Even a little bit romantic, you know? Adventure. There's none. There isn't a hint of adventure in MMORPGs these days. Like, there is some unique features, there's that, but there's no feeling of adventure. You're getting into a game that you know already. I can play game in any language, without any issues, because they're so similar. It's always the same thing. And that's why randomness is an important factor when talking about MMORPGs. It should always have been the most important thing for the game. And when it comes to story, you don't really need to do a lot. Just make things happen. Make the enemies walk around. They already do to a certain degree. Make them migrate from place to place. You don't need to have like a massive expansive world. Instead, you can just have like a small zones separated with a tiny loading screen or non-visible loading screen as they transition, and you can set so monsters transition from one to another, and they keep rotating. Not just monsters, the dungeons, the events, everything keeps rotating, changing constantly. Now that would be heavy on the bandwidth, of course. But if it's, let's say, more behind scenes, like you have things happening right now, for example, and let's say at this specific time in a day, there is an event like, let's say, defend the town. And as everybody's defending the town, then randomness, the resets of all the zones happen. While everybody's busy, because they have to, for example, doing the event of defend the town or do some wall boss or something like that, everybody's busy there. You have everything switch about. And you can do it with multiple servers. You can have in between servers, because it's not impossible to have multi-server events. It's been done before. You have the multi-server PvP, where you come from one server to PvP another server. You have these things. So instead, have a world boss there, and everybody has to fight it. No matter what level they are, they have specific things they can do in the fight. From like the lowest levels will have to deal with the small enemies that are charging at them. The stronger players have to deal with the mini bosses, and like the strongest players have to deal with the main boss. Just set them in layers. It works well enough. It's not impossible. It doesn't mean that it's gonna require all the bandwidth in the world. It's a simple thing where you separate everything in channels so it doesn't get too cluttered, and at the same time introduce players to a fresh experience every time, so they don't get bored. They don't get into this feeling of constant repetitiveness. Like, the game shouldn't be work. We have plenty of repetitiveness in our lives already. We go to work like every day, the same job for same hours. Nothing changes. So why should the same thing happen when we come back home and sit down to relax, enjoy our hobbies? It shouldn't. And if you think that's what sells, no wonder games are dying. No wonder there's not a single good MMORPG. It's been how many years? It's been over 20, 30 years since the first... no, it's probably not 30 years. Maybe 20 years, 20-something years since the first MMORPG came out. And you're telling me after all this time, they couldn't find a way to make it better? Good graphics are not necessary. Jesus Christ. Some indie games with pixel graphics look amazing. All that matters in that is just, animation. So make it random. That's the main thing I'm trying to say here. But went off there, but make it random and set your expectations for it. As long as you can get randomness running through the world, you can really, really make an impact and introduce like this feeling of adventure to the players. Next thing is combat. Combat is quite often looked as like one of the core things about the games, about the MMORPG. Since it's hard to do a good combat in MMORPG, you have a lot of limitations, a lot of requirements and all these things. So you can't just make it as good as a single player, for example, where you don't have those limitations. Which is why a lot of companies now are looking at the old type of combat, like World of Warcraft, and in some cases even Lineage 2, which is surprising, but not too far-fetched. So I don't understand that. Why is it? You just have to have a slower style of combat focused on groups instead of individuals. And then you will have a good combat. Because right now, the biggest issue is all the companies are focusing so one player alone could beat the game. That's their goal. And I understand that because a lot of people want to play alone. But in my opinion, when talking about MMORPGs, that's MMO, that means massive multiplayer. The main thing that everybody should focus on is groups, not individuals. A group content should be the main focus, and the solo play is secondary, because that's how the games should function. And on that note, I'm gonna move on to the next point. Groups. Groups is extremely important. Without them, the MMO is not an actual MMO. It's just a game, a single player game with some other players running around. That doesn't make it nothing new, just a game with worse story, worse missions, and worse combat. So I don't see the point sometimes in even playing something like New World over Skyrim, because Skyrim is better. And if you don't want a bad gameplay, go play Skyrim. You have better gameplay, you have better quests, you have better missions, like everything is better there. It just is. If you want to play solo, that game is better. Why should you play a game that's worse? So I believe the group content should be the main focus for MMOs. The game's supposed to be hard. Not impossible, of course, for the solo players. You don't want to cut them out completely. There's people that love this kind of combat and loves this kind of games like the MMOs, and they like the people running around. But it shouldn't be an easy thing. It should be hard. Like, oh, you want to play alone. Oh, but remember, this is an MMO, so you're gonna have to face a lot of challenge. You will get more reward alone, but you will struggle. And that is fine. That is how it should be. A single solo player should struggle more than a group. And a group should not be punished for being in a group. There should be a certain level of rewards. So a solo player would get rewards for beating a strong enemy alone. That requires a group. A group should be rewarded for being in a group, from synergies to faster growth. The reward should be more in terms of items and materials, because a group has to split, but individual does not, so he gets everything. But he does not level faster. Even in the real world, group will always outperform individual, because group shares the knowledge. They grow faster together because of the different points. So, of course, it's important to be smart about these things and make them work with the theme of the game. If you want to make MMORPG, focus on the group content. Focus on the synergies. And that is the next topic. Synergies. So I talked about the combat, I talked about the group. Let's look into something a little bit more interesting. So the only game that has proper synergies for the classes and really feels natural while playing the group is Final Fantasy XIV. Partly being because the combat is so slow and more tactical. They have more options to focus on the group content and the synergies. But I believe the combat is just too slow. It can easily be much faster. Terra, for example, is one game that had amazing combat, which is just slow enough and just good enough. The only issue was you could have easily beaten it alone. If Terra was hard, if Terra was more focused on group content, the combat there would be amazing. And I believe the game would have succeeded a lot more than it did. Well, it didn't succeed. It died. It's not playable anymore. But it would have succeeded. But it didn't. So, yeah. That is just how the world works, so to speak. Anyway, so yeah, you have to have synergies between classes. And then the next point, since we just spoke about the classes, the combat, is skills. Quite often, I don't understand why you have to have active skills. Let's be real. It's extra management. It does not provide a satisfying experience. It's a great idea. It works if you're trying to do like a PvP and tactical thing, but it doesn't necessarily should mean that that's what you should focus on. So there's the thing. You can instead allow players build combos. A passive combo, one button click, will determine how you fight. So you still keep the tactics part of the game, because the player builds their own way of combat, like their own combo, like, okay, so he has vertical slash, then side slash, then backstab, or whatever it is. You have all these things, and they line them up in the way they feel like is good for them. So for a casual player, they just randomly put stuff in, and like, oh, it works, that's fun, okay, I love it. And give them that freedom. Instead of learning haptic skills, people learn combos. Different combos have different effects, they have different strengths and weaknesses, and people can build them on top of each other. The game that I know done this in a way is Solver. That system, Solver system, is actually great for MMORPG. You build your skill set based on how you want to play the game. So you can have a knight that builds DPS to be a melee fighter, like a warrior, for example. You don't have to have classes, but instead you have specifically skills that people can learn and gain as they play the game. Instead of having a trainer that trains you everything in the world as you level up, you have a trainer that trains you basic things, like you go how to slash, like few basic combos, and the rest you have to find in the world while finding monsters, while finding, let's say, some manuals or whatever it is. you find different abilities as you travel around. Maybe you'll find some specialists, some martial artists or whatever. You can add some advanced NPCs in this sense, and you have to do something for them to get these things. And these NPCs wander around the world. Another great reason for people to explore. When you do all these things that I mentioned, everything, you create a world that is always changing, always different, and grants player the feeling of actual adventure. As simple as that. And there's really nothing difficult about it. Every company can make it. I mean, I expected Amazon to go in that direction, but they chose not to. And on that note, with my watch playing the 6 o'clock tune, the video ends. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a good weekend, and see you next time.